Welcome everyone, my name is Philine Widmer. I'm from ETH Zurich Center for Law of Economics and I'm happy to present the latest episode of our vlog to you. I'm pleased to introduce our guest, Professor Luigi Zingales, who is a professor of entrepreneurship and finance at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, and he is also the host of the podcast Capitalisn't. Today we're going to talk about shareholder democracy. Welcome, Professor Zingales. It is a pleasure to have you here.
My pleasure to be here.
So it is my pleasure to talk to you today about your research. In your research, you follow different strands. What we're going to focus on today is corporate governance, and specifically the topic of shareholder democracy. And I was curious, maybe to start, you could explain what you mean by shareholder democracy.
With pleasure. So, as economists, we generally start from the assumption that first maximize profits. Now, that's a strange assumption because when it comes to individuals, we think that individuals maximize utility, not profits. And you and I are certainly not maximizing income by being professors. We could obtain much more by not being professor, but we value certain things, and that's the reason why we are professor. So why, when we think about corporations, we don't think that individuals who invest in this corporation might have objectives other than simply maximizing income? And why do we need to force individuals to agree only to the minimum common denominator, which is profits? And so in an article by Oliver Hart in 2017, we say that firms should maximize welfare, not profits, where welfare is shareholders' welfare. And the question is, how do you go about identifying what these objectives are? You need to have some form of asking people. And so we can discuss the various mechanisms, but the idea of shareholder democracy is to ask the shareholders what they want to maximize.
Okay, that's very interesting, and so I'm given to understand that one of your key viewpoints is that shareholder democracy is complementary to regulation. Could you elaborate on this and perhaps also explain how you delineate the two?
Sure. I think that if we force companies to only focus on the bottom line, we are going to have companies that really try to maximize the externalities, because in order to maximize profits, you want to dump all the problems to somebody else, which are the externalities. So you maximize the damage to some extent, down to society at large. Now, this damage can be contained and should be contained by regulation. However, rarely regulation is so perfect and so pervasive, because let's remind ourselves that many corporations operate in the entire world, and so even if they are regulated in the EU or regulated in the United States, they're not as well regulated when they go to Africa, when they go to Asia, when they go to other countries. And so I think that the concern is companies that only focus on profits and nothing else might create more damage, even in a world where regulation is working, and even more so in a world that is unfortunately our world, where regulation is not working perfectly. So in no way I intend to say that shareholder democracy is a substitute for regulation, is a complement to regulation.
So if I may follow up on this, you just said that this international dimension also is one reason why shareholder democracy is important. You mentioned the example with maybe damages done in countries of the South. So do you think that shareholders, do they care more about these damages, or are they just in a better position to take some oversight function and to see what the companies is doing around the world? Or Is it linked to more like legal reasons for like jurisdiction, or why do you think that shareholders are in a good position to address these international externalities?
First of all, because companies know precisely what they are doing, and so they can reduce the cost of this externality in a much more effective way than regulation ex post. So think about pollution. It's much easier not to pollute than to pollute and clean up. Or even to try to prevent pollution from the outside, when very often the outside world does not even know the substances that are used. Chemical companies are the ones who have the best information about how damaging what they produce is, and so they are in the best position to make the trade-off. And so if they focus only on profits, they ignore this externality. But my view, and maybe I'm sort of too idealistic, but I think that most people will feel embarrassed to make a lot of money out of killing people with the toxic substance they dump in the river. And the point that I want to make is that we somehow are responsible because our retirement funds are invested in companies that behave like this, and we somewhat profit from them. So if we confront somebody and say, are you willing to kill a few people to make a few more bucks? Most people will say no, but not just because they want to look good. I think intrinsically they will feel embarrassed to do that on their own. So why do we do that in a mediated way? Is most of the time because we pretend we have no impact. That's where shareholder democracy is kind of a two-sided coin, because on the one hand you have more power, on the other hand you recognize the responsibility that you have as a shareholder.
So you talked about like chemical companies or the like. Every now and then we do see in the headlines that there's a lot of pollution, for example, in foreign countries. What went wrong in these situations? Like why did shareholder democracy not work in these cases where it...
Oh, because at the moment, until 2021, the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States made it basically impossible for shareholders to have a serious debate on these externalities. So there is a very famous case in early 70s where one shareholder tried to put on the ballot of Dow Chemical a proposal saying, we don't want Dow Chemical to produce napalm that is used in Vietnam to kill people. And the SEC said that this is not a proper subject for a shareholder meeting. So this was not a statement about we believe or don't believe in the Vietnam War, which is more a political issue. This is a business decision. Are you selling to the US government, knowing that the US government used this stuff to kill Vietnamese people? And that's the kind of responsibility I want shareholders to take. Do you want to make money out of killing people in Vietnam? Yes or no? I think that my presumption is many people will say no, but maybe I'm wrong, but at least I want them to be given the opportunity to express their opinion and, in a sense, take responsibility.
So what I hear from what you're saying is you also want to do some kind of like a call also to shareholders to take this responsibility. And you've just mentioned that the SEC has lowered the threshold, I think it was in 2021, right?
Yes.
For such like policy issues broadly defined and to be discussed at shareholder meetings. Where do you think further regulation is going, or where should it go? What do we need to enhance this responsibility by shareholders?
Actually, ironically, what we need is further deregulation, because today the regulation is pushing companies in the direction of only focusing on shareholder value maximization. So if I am BlackRock, for example, and I manage your pension money, you are a very nice person. I'm sure you care deeply about the environment and a lot of other things. And you might want your vote to go in a particular direction. At the moment, BlackRock feels obliged to vote in every decision in the way that only maximize shareholders' value. So let me make a concrete example. Some shareholders of Pfizer and of Moderna put out to a proposal at the shareholder meeting to share the COVID vaccine for free with African countries. And BlackRock voted against this proposal. Now, what is interesting, in spite of the negative vote of BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity, and State Street, which represent generally 30 or 35% of every company, they got 27% of the vote in favor. So this was not like a fringe proposal that only some radical people will support. This is a proposal with a significant amount of support. And honestly, if those 4 institutions I just mentioned had voted in favor, it would have passed. Okay? Now, I'm pretty sure that you own some shares of Pfizer directly or indirectly. I'm pretty sure that you would have voted in favor, but your representative felt obliged to vote against. So that's the first step that I want to break, is that you either can express your vote directly, or BlackRock feels obliged to find a way to elicit your preferences and understand what you really want. Or now we are exploring, Oliver, Hart, and I, and with the political scientists at Yale, the possibility of having some form of citizen assembly of the investors that will determine what the typical investors in this company would like. So citizen assemblies are randomly drawn assemblies that, because of stratified sample, they represent the population of investors, and you have them deliberate on what they want to vote on these issues, and you hope that because of the statistical properties, they represent what the investors want to do. So it's a very cost-effective way to sample your investors in an intelligent way, because if you just ask the question, most of the time they're not prepared to answer. But in this case, they have the time to study the issue and arrive to what we hope is a thoughtful conclusion in a way that is representative of what investors want.
So you're saying we would compensate them and potentially provide them with information
Exactly.
to make a good decision. So this brings me to my next question, information. So most of these, let's say we have such an assembly and investors are like randomly drawn, and many of them, they might not observe in their daily lives what the company actually does. So they strongly rely on good quality information. Who would provide this information? Is it the company itself? Is it the media? Is it independent rating agencies? And more generally, like, where do shareholders get good information?
This is a very important question. I think that in this particular case, I see a third party like Vanguard or BlackRock running these assemblies. BlackRock does not necessarily have an axe to grind. Particularly in this moment, they are really under pressure in the United States from both sides of the political aisle to basically be independent. So I think that what they should do is simply facilitate these shareholders to make a decision. And what I envision is that you will have both the companies and the people proposing this issue on the ballot to come and speak to the shareholders and make their case, one in favor, one against, and then them having control and asking, I want more information on this particular topic. I want to ask who are the best scientists to explain the effects, or the best doctors, or so have some agency in the choice of information. So I don't envision these assemblies as simply being fed information from outside, because otherwise, you know that if you control the information, most of the time you control the outcome. So you want them to get some agency and choose what information they want to see.
So they would have some kind of like budget to ask experts or
Exactly,
something along these
exactly.
lines. Okay. So thank you very much for these insights. Maybe circling back a bit to research, this is perhaps a bit more of a normative question, but where do you think should future research go? What questions do we have to answer? Where are the gaps?
So I think that there are two important areas of research. One is to try to get a better sense of where these externalities are and how big they are. So I give an example of another type of research I'm doing. We all know the short-term effect of pollution, in particular PM2.5, which is a small particulate matter that we breathe. There's very little evidence on the long-term effect. So a bit like smoking, if you smoke a pack a day, you don't die right away. You generally die 20 years later, okay? And so we don't know 20 years later what the pollution of that factory does. And I think that that's something that we need to estimate, because even from a liability point of view, it's very difficult to bring a case 20 years later. Most people move. So I think that understanding the magnitude of the externalities, also including the long-term externalities, is, I think, very, very important. And I think also try to figure out what are the incentives within organizations. I think that most organizations are not evil by design, but they end up behaving a bit in an evil way because nobody takes responsibility. So I spend more time than I care to admit at looking at egregious cases of corporate wrongdoing. And what is fascinating is what I call the banality of corporate evil, that you have all these decent people that as a result of the fragmentation of responsibilities contribute to a collective disaster, but nobody feels really responsible. So if you go around today at Boeing and you say, who is responsible for the planes not flying or falling down, I think you'll be hard-pressed to find one single person that is the responsible, and certainly I don't think you find any person that is evil. But how evil it is to have planes that might fall down.
I actually said it was the last question, but it's super interesting, and I have one tiny question that I want to ask regarding the first, like the externalities. Who should have the burden of proof? So if you sell a product or something along these lines, do you have to prove that it's not harmful as a company, or does the regulator have to prove to you that it's harmful? Or like, I mean, that's typically for a lot of the examples that you gave, it's probably one of the problems, right? That
it's certainly one of the problems, but it's not only prove is harmful or not, is over what time horizon. So for example, take in the United States, you have some pretty severe testing about whether medicine is good or not and whether it's dangerous or not. However, after medicine is approved, there is very little research to see the long-term effects of that drug. And clearly the pharmaceutical companies don't have any interest in doing that, because once the medicine is approved, the news is only negative, so you don't want to search. And everybody else don't have the resources. So I think that in that particular case, for example, it would be useful to have a small tax on medicines that finance long-term academic research on the effect of this. I think that having access to the funding and access to the possibility of doing this kind of research is important to select what is best for the public at large.
Thanks a lot. That was very, very interesting. I hope our viewers enjoyed this vlog as much as I did, and I hope you did too. Maybe for the last couple of seconds, is there something that you want to say, or something you want our listeners to keep in mind?
Let me say that I think that all my research has been dedicated to try to make the system we live in, the capitalist system, better. I think that most of the people are either sort of fanatic of capitalism, say that this is great, or they hate it and they want to destroy it. I think there is relatively little research focused on trying to make the system better. And that's been all my research is dedicated to this, and my podcast is dedicated to discussing precisely this.
Thank you very much for all these insights. We are looking forward to hearing and reading more about your research. We hope that you, the viewers, enjoyed this episode as much as we from the Center of Law and Economics did, and we're looking forward to welcoming you in future episodes.